Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Brick by Brick Stories of Homes. I'm your host, Edmy. So today you have only me, unfortunately. But as promised, we're going to talk about my experience with flipping, how I made that lateral move. And it's basically in a attempt of peeling back the curtain on how to build business, how I build that side, and what happened to me in the process. So to kind of like give you a little bit of perspective, 3 years ago, I sat down, and that was after being in sales as an agent for 3 years, about. So I had always wanted to kind of like progress to the part of being able to take on the flip and make that investment and, continue further down the line. But finally, 3 years ago, I made the decision, sat down, talked to my wife, and we ended up purchasing the first flip that was in all intent to propel us to continue to do it. And I ended up shifting or flipping, I should say, my entire perspective, my entire life, and belief system about the process. So buckle down, let's talk about it. Now, have you ever taken a step so big that you ended up not just putting yourself in a uncomfortable situation, but testing every aspect of your life? And at the end, for it to actually pay off more than you ever expected. So, in sum, that was my story. So, how did I find this property? Now, again, remember, I'm a realtor. I around 20 end of 2021, I sold a property kind of like right around next door here in Brockton. And as I was walking throughout the process of working with this client, I saw this burnt down property. And of course, I thought like it would be like in the TV, as long as I had a good plan and I had everything settled down, bigger risk, bigger reward. But there was something about that property when I saw it, I was like, you know what? I would love to flip that property one day. So I don't know if God heard my prayers or some way, shape, or form, the universe was like, okay, that's the one that I needed. But a couple months later, that property came on the market. So I was like, great. I saw it. I had a good feeling about it. Now I want to go see it in person and see if I can make the deal. So I actually did walk through. And again, everything seemed like it was just clicking. Like I walked through the property, I could see the potential. I could see the vision for what I would love for it to become. So all I needed to do was, based on the preliminary numbers I had, just take a deeper look at the structure and everything, so I could make a final decision on whether or not I would put an offer. But again, everything seemed to click. I walked in, had the vision, and I didn't see any major structural issues. So I was like, well, that's it. Spoke to a few contacts I had. I opted at that time to go through a hard money lender route. And for those who don't know, a hard money lender is quite different than your typical loan or mortgage person, where typically you would get the loan to purchase the property, and more often than not, they also finance your construction budgets. Typically, it would be close to 100% of it, or sometime a little bit less, depending. But you also still come up with your down payment. And at that time, they the one of the biggest requirement was for me to have an LLC. So I had the name already picked out. I had everything set up. So I got my pre-approval, decided on, based on my numbers, what I wanted to offer, and just went to town. And I ended up being one of the best bids. But of course, we had some back and forth with negotiation, had to adjust a little bit. But at the end, I paid a little bit more than I had planned. So I bought the property for $265,000. And my goal was that I had 6 months to renovate this property and sell it for a profit. That was the plan going in. And I had a budget of 150,000 initially to put in, do the renovations, and get out. So buying at 265, putting 150, and at that point, the after repair value was about 500,000. So I believe that I could get about 510, somewhere between 510 to 535 for the property. So beautiful numbers, great numbers, look solid. I had spoken to a few contractors already. Was time to actually get them to do a final walkthrough and have everybody finalize their number. So I ended up choosing a contractor that was referred to me by someone I know, but also had shown me that he had experience with what I wanted to do. And I've seen some of his projects, I've heard some good feedback. Um, so all in all, everything was looking good at that point, and I was excited. The numbers looked good. I had enough margin, I believed. But hey, ding, ding, ding. Reality met me, or the rubber hit the road at that point. But right after we got a contract together to start, made the deposit. So the contractor came in, started some demo, and again, at that point, everything was looking very exciting because this was, always something that I wanted to do. I was excited to be on the property while they were doing demo, and kind of like just excited all in all to see the project starting, and I already had a vision of the finished product. So, it was great. Met with the architect to do the plans after everything was opened up. So, fast forward a month in, or a month and a half in, I start to have issues with the contractor. Deposit is made, the work started, but progress wise, where I was expected to be at was nowhere near. And this is where I started being tested. But again, I believe I had read enough and watched enough, if I should say, tutorial. And I also had someone who was mentoring me. Kind of like I had some conversation with them. So I believe I had enough kind of like knowledge to be able to go past the issue with that contractor and have the project move forward. But what I did not realize at that time, they always say hindsight is 2020, was that I was dealing with a con artist. And let me tell you, he got me good. So we started having issues because one, I noticed that on multiple days that I went to look at the site, there was no one there, either no one there to work or just one person doing very minimal work. And if there is one thing to know as you're flipping the property, the longer you hold the property, the more you're spending in your holding costs. So, we started butting heads because I was noticing, or I was afraid that I was not going to complete in the timeline expected. And keep in mind, we're only a month and a half in, but um, with the fact that he wasn't showing up on days that he needed to be there was starting to worry me. Now, one of the biggest that happened around that time frame as well was that, and again, it was supposed to be a complete rehab. Like, we gutted the house down to the studs because it was fire damage, so we had to get rid of everything that was damaged by the fire so that we could replace with brand new. Now, one of the big ticket items was the roof that needed to be patched, and because I also wanted to do a dormer. And what a dormer is when you take a part of the roof and you lift it higher than where it was originally. So they typically call that a dormer. So because I wanted to do that, so that needed to be done before they could, before we could get the framing inspection done. So the house needed to be weather tight. So all holes closed up, everything set, framed, so that you can move to the next step, which would be insulation. So it became delays after delays. The roof wasn't being done. So I started to put the pressure on him because at that point we were getting close to being 2 months into the project, and with the fact that I had everything already planned out, like I had the budget set, the contractors lined up, into the contractors for the different areas. So I had one responsible for the framing, another one I had the electrician, the plumber. So I had everybody set up and ready to go one after the other. But with the initial contractor being a huge problem, everything started to be pushed back. So we're looking at almost 2 months in the project. Nothing is being done as I was expecting. And all he kept on providing me at that point was what today I define as excuses, but what he was portraying as additional work to be done that wasn't in the scope initially. So, and one of the things that he told me that we needed to do was adding more support to the frame of the house. So the way he portrayed it was that, hey, you had the first floor that looked like it didn't have enough support. It was caving in. We needed to add some more posts to level it to make sure that the house was solid. Okay, made sense. So one of the things to do the post was that, hey, we needed to add footings. Again, something similar to things that I would see. So I was like, okay, makes sense. Let's plan, let's budget. Again, I had enough margin to cover that. Let's go. Now, I made one of the mistakes that later learned that you should never make, is to have a period of time of not going to the site. Because again, life continues despite that. I had clients that I had to work with, It was also my wedding anniversary. We had a vacation that was already planned. And, I had delays. So since everything needed to continue, I was like, okay, you can reach me by phone for a period of week, but I will not be available. But please send me pictures, keep me updated while I'm away. Oh boy. I got some pictures, but not of what I wanted to, not of what was supposed to be done. So I got some pictures of the roof that was quote unquote being done. And, I remember one of the days he actually called me on a video call and was like, hey, we're actually on the roof. We're getting the work done. And he's showing me the new roof being installed. And mind you, I'm away. I'm miles away in the Caribbean. And I'm all excited. I'm like, okay, things are going good. The roof is being done, which means by the time I come back and, in a couple weeks, that means we should at least have the framing inspection done. Boom, boom, boom. 2 weeks. I'm back. And I decide to visit the site. To my shock, no one is there to work. And the roof is actually the same roof, which means it wasn't done. But I look on the garage, which wasn't part of my plan, other than fixing some of the siding that was rotten on there. I noticed a brand new roof on the garage. But the main house was completely or as I left it, I should say. And I walked inside and I'm noticing that the basement is being dug down. I freak out. So I call him. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm actually there. Nobody is there. Are you coming? Like, I'm kind of like confused and trying to understand. So he's like, oh yeah. Well, I'm actually on the way coming in. I went to get a few things. The guys are with me. They needed to eat or blah blah blah. So they come in and I'm asking questions. I'm like, well, I know we should have been done with the roof, the dormer, have everything closed up. But what I'm seeing is that there's more work that's being done that I didn't even plan on. And that's when he proceeds to tell me, well, we the area that we had to open up and dig to add the footings, it's almost as if it was the entire basement. So we had to break the slab and kind of like dig everything down. I'm like, but wait, that doesn't make sense. What's going on? He's like, yeah. I mean, we had to do it. You're gonna have. I mean, you can take advantage of that and actually have more headroom in the basement and all that. He's going on, and all I could see at that point was like, well, that's eating up my margin. So we go back and forth where I'm like, well, this is not part of the plan. This is not what's supposed to be done. And you didn't even ask me permission to actually start or expand the scope of the work. So what are we doing about this? So we go back and forth and we end up negotiating an agreement to cover the cost of the extra work in arrears, which at that time I was happy with that agreement because it allowed me to continue everything and to, I would say, move the project along without losing too much. And so 2 weeks go by, they're there every day, they're working, but then again, nothing is still to the point where it's fully framed or closed up, or still like it's not, like I'm having some doubts about how long it's taking to do that part, because that wasn't lining up with anything that I used to see, whether it be on TV or tutorial or conversation with other people that I had that were in the business. So I start to put the pressure again, because to kind of like get some explanation. And he's like, well, again, a barrage of stories or explanation as to what was causing more delays. So at that point, I was like, well, if it's manpower that you don't have, or that you're concerned, because he also portrayed it as in a way that he would like to save me money. So I'm like, well, I'll supply additional manpower. And the way that I thought about it, I was like, okay, I had people I knew that I could bring with me, and my stuff that was handy enough to actually get the work moving faster. So we do. Work pushes fast. Again, I start being happy because things were moving along. I'm getting, where there used to be an empty hole when you walked in the house to there's an actual subfloor now. I can walk in on the first floor and not be concerned about falling through. So I'm like, okay, we're moving along. This is looking good. And a couple weeks, no, a week goes by again, and boom, boom, boom. What would you guess? There's another problem. Now it's the second floor. He's telling me, well, he doesn't think that he can keep it as is because it's unlevel. He has to take out everything and reframe it. I'm like, well, again, not in the budget. I understand things happen, but what is going on? He pushes it again, but long story short, we go back and forth. We get an agreement together again, which at that time, happy with the terms. I'm thinking we have everything resolved, but the hammer hit harder the next day when I come in, because I had made it a point at that time to be on site every day. First thing in the morning, spend most of the day, do what I had to do, meeting with other clients, but kind of like be there to supervise everybody. Because hey, it was my baby at that point. But the next day, I come in as I'm bringing in some material that was requested, and I see this orange sticker on there. I'm like, wait a minute, it can't be what I think it is. So I walk in, and yeah, it's a stop work order violation by the city because, well, I didn't know at the time the reason, but I take a picture, send it to him, and I call him. I'm like, hey, what's going on? What is this? Why? Do you know why we have a violation? So he's like, well, okay, let me take a look at it. I'll give you a call back. So he gives me a call back. He's like, yeah, it's something very easy that can be fixed. So we'll get it solved and then we'll continue. But long and behold, and I think that's where the universe was looking out for me. The As I was unloading the materials, the inspector came back. He was in the area, came back and was like, hey, what's going on? There's a stop work order. I'm like, well, there's nobody working, so I'm just dropping these in. And, I go ahead and ask the question, so what's going on? It's like, well, I mean, there's a lot more work being done. There's a lot of work being done, and you don't seem to have a permit. I'm like, what do you mean there's no permit? He's like, yeah, there's no permit on file for the work being done. So you need to apply for the right permits and follow through. So at that point, I start fuming because, again, part of the contract that was drafted, agreed upon, was that everything would be done up to code, that a permit would be pulled, and, it would be done right. So he's like, oh no, well, so I call him and we get into a shouting match. And he's like, well, no, no, no. I had a conversation with the building department. I was actually given the green light to start doing the work. And we can pull one permit all at once. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense if they're coming by. If you had that conversation and they're coming by and putting a stop work order because more work is being done. It's like, well, don't worry. There's that can be solved easily. So I'm like, well, handle it, and I need it fixed by tomorrow. So tomorrow comes, get a call. He's like, okay, we need to meet. Can we meet at the place? I go in, so we set, and again, big red flag. He's late, and then he tells me, well, we have a problem because there's not enough funds. I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean there's not enough funds? He's like, well, you remember we had to do extra work, blah, blah, blah. Now we need to pay more for the permit, X, Y, and Z. We go back and forth. And again, go into shouting match, end up losing, I want to say probably a week before we solve this. We come to an agreement. And during that time, I start actually, because I thought it was time, but I start looking for other contractors. But I was kind of like at a point where everyone else was giving me much higher bids than what I initially had planned. And even at that point, with what I had available at my disposal in terms of funds and what I had as margins. So I felt at that time that I had to remain with the same contractor and find a way to resolve the issue that we had. So call him, we worked things out, paid for the new permit. I get at that point, I think I had gone to the building department, spoke to them, realized that I could create an account because, hey, we're in the 21st century. A lot of things can be done online now. So I created an account so that I could have control about what's going on. So I had the notification that the permit was applied for, that it was pulled. So I also got the notification that, hey, boom, permit was issued. So I am thrilled, happy. We had lost at that point 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks. So I was ready for work to resume to get things moving. So I was thrilled. So I get the notification. I give him a call. I'm like, hey, I got the notification that the permit is given. Did you receive it? Are we able to? Are you able to come in tomorrow to get everything going? So he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I got the notification. We're good. I actually have the permit. I'm just gonna print it out, post it, and we're gonna push everything through. Tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, I'm there. Now, the beauty of it is that I lived 5 minutes away from the flip. So I could easily drive down and be there to open up the doors and kind of like see things starting. So 8 o'clock, drive down. I'm there. Nobody's there. I'm like, wait a minute. This is starting concerning. I'm like, well, maybe I'm a little too early. 8:30, nobody's there. I'm like, okay, this is odd. He's supposed to be there at 8. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, I get it, but we're talking about half an hour now. So I call him. He's like, yeah, yeah, no. Traffic was brutal, but I am almost there, around the corner. And that was one of his favorite things. I am around the corner. I am almost there. So I decide, okay, I'm waiting. But keep in mind, I left home early, didn't have breakfast, nothing. Just because I wanted to be there to make sure everything was starting. So he finally shows up almost 9 o'clock, and boom, I get the notification that the permit was revoked. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I'm asking him like, hey, well, I just got a notification that the permit was revoked. He's like, no, 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 I have the permit. So he shows me a permit, and remember that part of the story. He shows me a permit at that time, and again, I'm looking at it. It has the name. It has what I believed at the time should be on the permit. A number, scope, price, that it's authorized, approved. So he posted, he's like, don't worry, I'll follow up, but we can actually start work. So they start. So I spend an hour. I see that they're working. So I'm like, okay, that means I can go back to handle what I need to, because I had back to back clients to meet. I had different other appointments to follow up with. So I go on about my day. We spend about a week. A week he's working, and then I come back. I see another violation, and at that point, I'm like, okay, this is problematic. This is and this is not going well. What's going on? So he's like, so I go, instead of calling him this time, I go to the building department to find out what's going on. And so they tell me that the permit was pulled incorrectly because there's no license that was provided, there's no insurance that was provided with the application. And I'm like, well, he did provide me with all those. I have his license, I have his insurance, and you know, I don't understand. And so I'm asking questions. They're like, well, if you can get us those, they can review it and follow up. So I go, as I'm stepping out, the inspector pulls me aside and was like, hey, you need to be careful, because when this gentleman showed up to apply for the permit, there was someone else that was signing, and it didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. So, boom, I'm like, oh my God. He's like, just make sure you follow through, make sure that you get everything that's needed so that the site doesn't get shut down. So I'm like, okay. I call him. And again, by that time, every time that I called him to do a follow up, he was very defensive. So it turned into a shouting match again, where no explanation was really being given. Nothing that was coherent or made sense, because by then it was almost a month or of hearing the kind of like same back and forth that didn't make sense. So I'm talking about a month in, but altogether about 4.5 months in the project. So I made the decision that I'm cutting ties. I need a new contractor. So I take the step, but on the day that I notified him that I am terminating our agreement, he tells me, well, hey, I was coming in the front step. I almost tripped. I mean, one of my workers almost tripped. So, because there was a loose break, so we had to demo the front steps. I'm like, what do you mean? And keep in mind, I live 5 minutes away from the flip. By the time I made it there, the front steps were gone. And I'm like, what? So we again go at it, tell him to pack up everything, leave. And I switched all the locks and everything. So we cut ties. So we were supposed to meet again to kind of like determine the value of the work that he had done so far. And again, I try to get things moving pretty quickly. So I line up a few other contractors, come in, get bids, get evaluated on, you know, try to get a sense of the value of the work that was done. And this is when I was getting bad news after bad news. Almost all the work that was done was shoddy, not up to code, and would have never passed inspection. So, which means a lot of it had to either be completely ripped out and redone or had to be corrected. So, again, same thing. Get bids, look at them, get the estimated value. So, I'm working two fronts at that time, trying to figure out the value so that I can get a refund from him, and trying to get new bids so I can pull the permit correctly and continue. So back and forth. So meet with him. So we determined that I should be refunded about 50,000 at that point. And basically determined the value of the work he had done. So I'm thinking, okay, let's sit down, let's have a conversation about this, figure out how the refund is going to be issued. So we meet, and of course, the meeting doesn't go well. We go back and forth. We It was more of a everything short of a fist fight type of meeting. And so we both ended up walking away with no actual resolution or set agreement on how to move next. And that was a tough time. But end up getting a new contractor, get the permit, trying to push everything forward. So we get the basement fixed, because one of the things that happened when he dug the basement, everything was on temporary support. So they ended up supporting the pouring a new foundation support, or new concrete for the foundation, a new slab and everything, and fixing all the mistake that had been done. And a month in, as I'm, well, no, so I want to say probably 3 months go in. So as we're moving things along, I'm a little bit happier. Things are moving along, although taking longer, because we now had to fix everything that was done incorrectly before we could even proceed to fixing stuff. So we are now at a point where we're tackling the dormer, the roof. We've cut down everything that was burnt and moving. So we're at the beginning of 2023 now. So tough. I want to say 8 months, because I closed on the property April 5th, I believe. April or May 2022. But all the way down to this to September was back and forth dealing with that issue. But around October, or end of September, October, I got the new contractor, and we were powering through, trying to catch up, if I can say at that point. And keep in mind, when you get a hard money loan, you do have monthly payments that you are making. And every time you draw, your loan amount increase, therefore your monthly payment increase. Um, so as we are powering through, we're at the beginning of 2023. I get a letter in the mail that I'm being sued, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I being sued? So I open it up, and to my surprise, it's the person who, well, at this point, I would define stole from me, is suing me, claiming that I have stolen from him. Now, keep in mind during that time, as we were going back and forth, because I was still trying to get the refund from him, he had also left a trailer and on the property. So we kept on going back and forth. So nothing could ever be resolved. He never showed up to get that trailer. And now I'm getting a letter that I'm being sued because I stole from him. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. So I get a court date. I show up. I bring all my receipt documents to kind of like, at that point, what I thought would have been straightforward, where, hey, someone said you did something, you have proof, or you listen to what they're claiming, you say your piece, you show your proof, and everything is set. But no. So he shows up, and I'm hearing that I actually stole his trailer, stole his tools, and didn't want him to come on the property to get them. And again, I'm shocked at that point because it's a whole different conversation than what I was expecting. And so now I'm sitting there. I have an attorney that is kind of like barraging me with questions and inundating me. So I end up asking for the meeting to be pushed. So we end up getting I don't know, continuance follow up, or what the right term is, but we get a follow up. So I go back, I get more proof. I was actually able to, because one of the claims was that the trailer was not left on the property, and that I moved it was left on the side of the road in front of the property, and that I moved the trailer onto the property. Now, again, I don't know if it was the universe, but I was able to find pictures online that showed exactly where the trailer was left. Also got plot plans showing the property lines. Try to refute that claim. So we get a follow up date. We show up. Now I have more proof. I have witnesses, or people kind of like, witnesses, I think, with me to support what I was claiming. So we're going back and forth, but then now the claims became even more absurd at that point. Now, value amount, and the extent of which, saying that, I cut things, that there's, it was unbelievable. So we agreed to go to mediation. So back and forth, we get into mediation. There's an agreement that's drawn up that, basically, he's able to come back, grab the trailer and whatever tools that is his from the property. And keep in mind, at that point, there's still no refunds. Just me addressing a criminal suit against me. So we agreed upon a day that he would come, that I would be there, so that he can grab everything and then walk away, so that pretty much at a later time we could figure out what to do with the refund and everything. So I show up and I'm standing there, but again, not surprising, but he's still not there at the time that we're supposed to meet. But I'm standing there waiting. About 30 minutes in, cops showed up. And now I'm getting questioned as to what's happening because they were called because there's an issue. And I'm like, I'm all confused because cops are here saying that there's an issue when I know I'm here waiting on someone to come pick up their belongings. And so he finally shows up and he says that basically I won't let him grab his stuff, and it's giving me chills now. So I explained to the officer that I do have the drawn up agreement of what he can say from what we got from mediation. So it was in the car, brought it. The officer read it, and he was like, you know what? Just step over to the side. Just let him do his things because that's not the call that we got. Like, I wonder. So go in, he grabs his stuff. Now, mind you, I had new contractors working. They have their tools in there. I had already placed everything of his outside so that he could grab, along with his trailer. So he's now wants to force his way inside the property to grab materials and tools of these other contractors. So I'm like, well, there's no way, that's not part of the agreement, him going inside the property. It's like, well, there's support columns. I'm like, well, hey, these are not part of the agreement. So the officer was nice enough to kind of like, again, double check the agreement. He asked me for permission to go into the property, walk through, didn't see anything of what he was claiming. And back and forth. So he's like, at this point, he realized that it's something being blown out of proportion. So he pretty much gets him to leave the property with everything that was agreed upon. And so he pulls me aside, says a little bit, talk to me, and tells me to make sure that to stop by, get a report of what happened, just in case I have a follow-up. So we were supposed to have a follow-up, but then weeks later, I get another letter for another date, again with absurd claims. So at that point, I realized that this was getting completely out of hands, because one thing that you don't always do sometimes is go down the rabbit hole of your search, because sometimes when you're searching, you'll find all the possible negative scenarios. And at that point, I was freaking out because everything I was reading about that type of suit was that I could even, if I lose, I could even potentially lose my license to practice real estate. And that was how I put food on the table for my family. So, needless to say, I was freaking out. And keeping in mind, I was taxed out financially because at that point, all the quotes from contractors were higher. I hired a new contractor at a higher quote. My margins were gone, and I was already about 8 months because we're talking. This whole process took another 2 months. I want to say 2 to 3 months. So I was about a year in, 10 to 11 months in, so about a year in, of paying a mortgage. So an added cost, monthly cost of over $5,000 a month. I think I said that already. An added cost of over $5,000 monthly, and dealing with this. So I decide that, hey, at this point, enough is enough. I need to get an attorney. I cannot deal with this on my own anymore. Um, Again, the universe works in its ways. I end up finding an attorney who I presented my case, and he listened, got all the information, and kind of like gave me, you know, advice on what to do next. So I, needless to say, I retained him. And he was like, well, he's going to handle it. I mean, one of the things he told me is that he's seen those before. So, anyways, long story short, we get to the date. So I show up with the attorney. And when we get in there, so again, his attorney and him, they start. Now there is a whole list of materials supposedly missing from the trailer or from when he came to pick up his things that equated to an amount of over $40,000. And I was surprised because, I don't know, just by coincidence, it was close enough to the number of what I was requesting as a refund. So, my attorney and I took some time. We looked at the list. And one thing stood out um, in that list. It was a tool that I specifically saw him and actually recorded or took pictures of him putting in the truck. That was part of that list. So I pointed it out to my attorney. So we talked about it. So he said, okay, he knows what to follow up. So long story short, we go back in. They again started some back and forth, and my attorney kind of like took it over, took some time. So magistrate said that, hey, he's pretty much got a clear picture. He heard of everything. That he would make a ruling or a decision on what to do next. By far, the longest 3 weeks of my life before I got the decision that there was no cause, or they didn't found any cause or any ways to substantiate the claims that were made by him. So I was happy because there was nothing else to follow up on, but I was pretty much in the hole at that point because, again, I had to spend an attorney fees. These were extra costs and ate up most of the funds that I was dedicating to put towards the repairs of what he could do. So, I had asked my attorney if I could counter sue or anything. I had some pretty good advice at that time, but after these advice and what I, sitting down and thoroughly thought, I opted not to follow through. But it put me in a really, really tough spot with the flip because I was now at a stage where funds were running dangerously low, and I was still not where I needed to be in terms of having the property weathertight so I could do the inspection for the framing and push things through. Keep in mind, we're about a year in. So at that point, I started to push through because one thing that I believed was that if I start something, I needed to finish it. So I pushed through, go back and forth. We moved quite a bit, fixed all the mistakes, got the dormer done. Got to a point where I needed an extension, which cost me an arm and a leg, but got a couple extensions so that I could continue. But then, what I did not expect, issues with contractors again. Started having a lot of issues because now I had a plumber that that started showing didn't show. The electrical that took care of everything, so he had his part down pretty quickly. So I went through probably 4 plumbers before I got one that was reliable enough. Then came issue with permit again because the contractors that I hired at that point needed to renew the permit, but supposedly they had issues with their license, so couldn't renew the permit. So I end up losing another three months or so. No, 4 months because I didn't have a permit and couldn't continue the work. So pretty much 4 months shut down of nothing and paying interest. So I decided that it was time to refinance so that I could kind of like shuffle things in and pay out the investors that I had in. So I refinanced, paid out the investors, got a new contractor, was able to get the permit, pushed everything through. Now, keep in mind, all my numbers by that point were shot. So the whole idea was that I purchased the property at 265,000, then I put 150 in, and then I sold 510 to 535. Now, one of the property that I was comping with was what I mean by comping was that it was a comparable, like a property similar to mine, was basically a brand new, was a new construction because what I had judged is that by the time I was done with the work that needed to be done, the property would be practically as close to a new construction as possible. So that property ended up being on the market. So my plan was to be listed at the same time, which was completely shot. And it sold, thankfully, sold higher than the price that I was even banking on, which was a good thing, which showed appreciation in the neighborhood. But I was still nowhere to being done. So, and keeping in mind, when I started to flip that property, they had just broken ground. And now the property was done and was sold, and I was still not nowhere near being done. So we get the new contractor. Now, one thing that I ended up doing around that time, because I noticed I was having so many issues with contractors, I decided that I was gonna put my handiness to good use. So when I negotiated the price with the new contractor, I had a lot taken off of labor because a lot of the labor was done by myself and someone else that I had working with me at that time. So we were there day in, day out. And my daily routine was pretty much get up by 6, drop off my wife at work by 6:45, come back, drop off my daughter at school, and then by 8:30 be on site to work from 8:30 down to 5:30, pick up my daughter, come back, pick up my wife around 7:30, and get back home. So I would be home by 9, do whatever I need to do because again, I was still selling property because I needed to stay in touch with what was going on in the market. I also needed to do whatever follow-ups, set up email follow-ups that I needed to do with clients, go to bed by probably 1 or 2 in the morning, and wake up the next day, do the same thing. So that was my day to day for the next year or so. Crazy. But to kind of like end there, so I end up, getting everything done, everything buttoned up. Come 2023 February, we now listed the property. Now, the market had appreciated enough, but not as much for me to get the price that I wanted to get at that point. To, I want to say, get the profit that I wanted to make. So we ended up I ended up testing the price at 650 because we now had a beautiful, completely redone 3-bedroom, 3 full bath property. We turned the property from a 800 square feet to 1700 square foot. Beautifully done. So probably listed, test the price at 650. Nothing happened, so I agreed to actually go live on market at 639.9. I get an offer accepted. 3 weeks in, I'm happy. Property's gonna get sold. But boom, 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 as things often happen, offer falls apart. My buyer loses financing. I now have to put the property back on the market. But remember, as I have said before, the universe works in mysterious ways. Right when the deal fell apart, when I'm like, okay, I probably need to do a few more things just to make the property more enticing and probably do a price adjustment. And so I could go, on market. So I get a call from one of the actually from my co-host. And he's like, hey, listen, is your property still available? Because I believe I have a client that the deal just fell apart and that house could work for them. I'm like, well, good thing you mentioned that. I do. I was actually going to do a price reduction to put it back on the market. Here's what the new price is. Do you think that would work? He's like, yes, the price would be perfect. Can we get them to see it? I'm like, yes, when? He's like, now. I'm like, yes. So we get, long story short, we get there, they look through, they're like, yep. So the agents come in, they come through, they walk through the property, they they do a video call with the client, perfect for them. They schedule to get them to see it the next day, and things just kind of like went from there to from the client seeing it in person to we put an offer together. I accept it. We negotiate inspection. Actually, we negotiate everything from that point. End up giving them a seller credit. Then we get appraisal. I had a few items that needed to be done. We get those done back and forth. We push through, and the property sold. So we ended up selling at 620,000. So if I'm looking at numbers, bought it for 265, and then I at that point, so if I'm putting everything in terms of rental costs, I end up spending about 261,000, um and making a decent gross profit. This was by far biggest check. You should have seen my face grinning through the whole thing, but biggest check I ever got handed in my entire life when we closed. So that minute that we signed on the dotted line was, other than the birth of my kids, marrying my wife, biggest or happiest moment. Um, yeah, but hey, if there's one thing, I mean, there's a lot of positive things that ended up happening through that process, because as I got more involved into the work, I also ended up putting kind of like creating a company and taking handyman work, doing side gigs to kind of like supplement my income, and doing a lot of works with client, um, because I was able to showcase what I was doing at that property as my work. Because hey, I could show, hey, I could do siding, I could do flooring, I could install a kitchen, I could, kind of like the list goes on as to what I could do, what I got to do, um, and was able to get a consistent flow of referral from that, and also provide work to the person that was with me. But lesson that I would say is, know your numbers when you're getting into, if you want to get into this type of business, know your numbers, do your research, and never think you've done enough, or you know enough about someone that you're hiring. They can always surprise you, because I truly believe that I had done enough research about the first contractor that I was hiring, and that because I also had personal referral or personal guarantee, people who seen them work, who've seen what he have done, who could vouch, people that I knew, um, that was enough to say, well, this was someone trustworthy enough to hire. But so know your numbers. Know that, hey, things, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and that you'll be okay at the end. Trust the process. Everything happens for a reason. But hey, thank you again for tuning in today. Next week, I'm actually very excited that we're gonna talk a little bit more about kind of like building this business and also flipping. Actually bringing in my mentor, someone who's been guiding me as an agent and also when I decided to do the flip, um, who's been doing this for a long time. And I'm excited to have him here and get his insight. But hey, thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.